I'm Pat Collins, and welcome to a special edition of Arts in the City, Fiddler Back on Broadway. This beloved musical opened in 1964 at the Imperial Theater, and since then has been performed by countless community theaters and high school drama clubs and presented on stages large and small around the world. Now Fiddler is back where it began. During the next half hour, the revival's director, Bartlett Shear, and co-stars Sandy Burstein and Jessica Hecht share their behind-the-scenes stories. But first, from a recent interview, producer Hal Prince and lyricist Sheldon Harnick reflect on the events that led to Fiddler's success 52 years ago.
If I were all day long I'd biddy bum if I were a wealthy man.
We wrote, I guess it was 50 or 60 songs, looking for the proper tone. A lot of people were worried, well, how do you make a musical out of this sad thing? So we made a rule for ourselves. We would have maybe one or two Hebrew or Yiddish words, and that's all. Jacqueline Kennedy was in the house one night, and the other word, I think, was Mazel Tov, when Tzeitel was going to get married. And when somebody on stage said Mazel Tov, Jackie Kennedy said, what was that? And people from rows around her said, it means congratulations, good luck. Our pre-Broadway tryout was in Detroit. And we were very worried because Hal Prince had booked a theater. They said, we will give you 3.5 weeks of tickets. The last week and a half, we don't have a ticket sold, but you have to be there for 5 weeks. So we didn't know whether we were going to die there. But the show went very well, and by the end of the run, we were kind of selling out. But we went from Detroit to Washington, and to our astonishment, there were long lines at the box office. And we thought, how did this happen? Because there were no reviews in Detroit. So we thought people in Detroit must have called their friends in Washington. We get to New York, and again, there's a long line at the box office. And I thought, this may never happen again in my career, and it never did, that the show apparently had this kind of word of mouth. So, and the previews were wonderful. The audiences were just ecstatic. And then opening night, I thought, oh my God, the audience is so quiet. The reviews were not smash hit reviews. We had one review, I think it was the Daily News, that said this is a great show. The rest of them were very mixed. The business, as it happened, kept up. It was fantastic. We didn't know we were going to run 8 years.
For you, what is the most emotional moment in Fiddler?
For me, the most emotional moment in the theater, oddly enough, is a moment of dance. It comes after the bottle dance. And the way Jerry Robbins staged it, the men who have done the bottle dance and then a couple of others have this wild dance. And I heard Robbins at rehearsal one day saying, remember what you are doing is you are communicating with God here. And so this ferocious dance happens, but it's a dance of passion directed to God. I'm not even sure exactly what it is saying, but whatever it is saying, I find very moving. And I remember in England, when I was watching the rehearsal, the men didn't realize that that's what the dance was until Robbins came in. And after he had talked to them, the difference in how they danced and before was just remarkable. It's a moment that always gets me.
The lyricist has to really connect emotionally to the characters. Was there ever a time when it was a bit of a struggle, not with Fiddler in particular, finding the soul of the character that you're writing the music for?
As a lyricist, I've had problems with certain shows that are more difficult than others, but with Fiddler, there was no problem. When I read those stories by Sholem Aleichem and started to work on it, it just reminded me of my own growing up. I grew up in a non-Jewish neighborhood, and our synagogue had been a secretarial school. It was just a long hall, but the older men who sustained that synagogue, they pooled their resources and they bought a church that had been abandoned, and that became our synagogue. But I just remembered the older men and the fervor with which they prayed. And those memories just kept coming back, and it was a joy to write and to explore my own feelings about Judaism, to explore all those feelings and put them on the stage.
And it worked.
And it worked.
When Moses softened Pharaoh's heart, that was a miracle. When God made the waters of the Red Sea part, that was a miracle too. But of all God's miracles, large and small, the most miraculous one of all is that out of a worthless lump of clay, God has made a man today.
In addition to Sheldon, Fiddler's creative team included Jerome Robbins, the director and choreographer, Jerry Bach, who composed the music, and Joseph Stein wrote the book. Behind the scenes was a young, successful producer, Hal Prince. It's opening night of Fiddler in 1964. What were your thoughts on that night? Did you know you had a hit?
Good question. I've never been sure of a show in my life.
Really?
Ever. And I'll tell you why. Because when we opened on the road, we were in Detroit for the summer, really, and there was a newspaper strike. And I called the various newspapers to find out what they would have written if they'd written their review. And the reviews were all bad.
In Detroit?
In Detroit. And Variety wasn't good. So I sat down and wrote a letter to my investors. And I said, there were like 175 of them. I said, you're going to read something in one of the newspapers because we didn't get the Detroit reviews, but you'll probably hear that the reviews are terrible. Believe me, it's the biggest hit we'll ever have, any of us. And just relax. We're bringing it to New York. And the reason for that is the lines were there. The lines were there almost from the first, from the first performance.
Did you initially turn down the opportunity to produce Fiddler?
I don't recall that. What I recall is that Jerry and Sheldon and I had done Fiorello, and
they were working on She Loves Me.
No, we'd done Fiorello, and they said, we've got a show to bring you, and we'd like you to direct it, and it was Fiddler. And I said, guys, I can't do Fiddler. I've heard of shtetls, but I don't know what they were, and I'm Jewish, but I'm German Jewish, and my family came over in 1830.
So you don't have
first
a
class on the
right,
liner.
So you don't have a connection
I don't
to this
have
material.
any emotional connection to the material, and I think you should get Jerry Robbins. And they said, well, we thought of Jerry Robbins. He's busy. And I said, well, it's still the best idea. And they said, why do you think it's the best idea? And I said, because he will give it universality. He'll move them in a way that will make the audience know this is not just a show for Jewish people. This is a show for humanity. And I said I'd wait for Jerry. And in '64, Jerry became available. And they went to Jerry, and Jerry said to them, get Hal as a producer, and I'll do it. And so the circle closed.
What's your favorite moment in the show? Emotional moment in the show?
Oh, tradition. Mm-hmm. And you know how that came about.
Tell me more.
Jerry we'd have meetings in someone's living room every day, practically, in the evening, with Jerry and Sheldon. Joe Stein, who wrote a brilliant book.
Brilliant.
Joe was a huge force in the development of the show. So the three authors and me and Jerry would say, okay, guys, now what's the show about? And then one of them, usually Joe or Sheldon, would say, well, come on, it's about a man, Tevye, the milkman, with 5 daughters, and he's got to marry all 5 daughters off. That's what the show's about. Next night, what's it really about? Well, it's also about pogroms and Jews having to leave Russia.
Exodus.
No, what's it really about? And I don't think he knew the answer, but he knew there was an answer. So finally, very perturbed, and Sheldon never gets very perturbed, he said, "Oh, for God's sakes, Jerry, it's about tradition." And Jerry said, "Write that."
Does it seem like it was yesterday?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. It seems like it was yesterday. Fiddler was invincible. From the day it opened, those lines were there, the people were, it was hypnotic in some way for an audience.
Many famous actors and actresses of stage and screen can claim a connection to Fiddler. Here is a partial list of the bold-faced names who hope to be cast in the musical, and those up-and-coming stars from the past who got the part. Before she was the divine Miss M, Bette Midler won rave reviews playing Zeidel in the original production. Golden Girls star Bea Arthur was Yenta, the first matchmaker in 1964. Starsky and Hutch's Paul Michael Glaser auditioned for and won the Perchik role in the movie version. Leonard Nimoy was cast as a thin Tevye in a 1971 touring production of Fiddler. Popular game show host Bert Convoy joined the original cast as Perchik. Book of Mormon star Josh Gad was Tevye in his high school production. Grammy winner Josh Groban sang If I Were a Rich Man in his high school production. Walter Matthau and Danny Kaye were on the short list for the Tevye role before Zero Mostel was cast. Gene Wilder did not get the fiddle role he auditioned for, but he became a star playing opposite Zero in The Producers. Before he became a celebrated Tony-winning director, Jerry Zaks played model in a touring production. His parents were not thrilled.
What happened was my parents were European Jews, Holocaust survivors, who hated the fact that I was in the theater. They thought it was a waste of a really great education. And it wasn't until they saw me in Fiddler, went backstage, and talked to Zero in Yiddish for half an hour, and asked Zero, my father asked Zero in Yiddish, is he going to be all right? Tell me he's going to be all right. And Zero in Yiddish said, he's going to be more than all right.
Danny Burstein and Jessica Hecht are two of the theater community's most respected actors. They have something else in common as well. She has never seen a Broadway production of Fiddler, and neither has he. Since 2006, Danny's credits include co-starring in The Drowsy Chaperone, South Pacific, Follies, Golden Boy, and Cabaret. He received a Tony nomination for all of them. Fiddler is Danny's 16th Broadway show.
If I were a wealthy
What does it mean to you personally, Danny, to be playing this iconic role?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I never thought that they'd ever pick me to do this role. You know, I expected them to pick a TV star, a movie star, and they usually cast somebody who's 70 years old, you know? And I'm 51, so it wasn't even in the realm of possibility, or I never even hoped for it. I never dared hope for something like this.
Danny, the sixth Tevye on a Broadway stage, portrays an iconic character previously played by Zero Mostel, Herschel Bernardi, Topol, Alfred Molina, and Harvey Fierstein.
If I were a rich man, all day long I'd bum. If I were a wealthy man, wouldn't have to work hard. If I were a bitty rich, idle man.
I don't think I'll be channeling any of the previous Tevyes necessarily. I have seen and heard little bits of all of them over the years and appreciate them all and thank them for what they did. And in a way, you know, I carry them on my shoulders with me every time I go into rehearsal. I want to honor those guys, but at the same time try my best to make it my own and make it honest and real as possible each time. It is an unbelievable challenge every single day. The role consists of 3 hours of singing and screaming, basically. So you have to be in incredible shape, and when you're not on stage, you have to live like a monk. So it's not easy.
What's the key to its enduring appeal, the show?
The key to Fiddler's enduring appeal is its universality. It touches on so many universal themes about tradition, breaking tradition, bigotry, strength, children, family, perseverance, and those are not unique to a Jewish family.
What's the most emotional scene for you in Fiddler? Not necessarily one that you're in, but that one that just gets you.
I have 2 sons. One is 22 and one is 19. And there is a scene where he has to say, Tevye has to say goodbye to one of his daughters who's going to be with the man she loves in Siberia. And they're at a train station waiting for the train. And it may be the last time he'll ever see, I'm starting to get emotional right now. It may be the last time he'll ever see his child, his daughter. And that scene is very emotional. You know, in the Shalom Aleichem stories, Tevye talks about never showing his emotions and rising above them. And I thought, well, that's the way I'm going to play it. I'm not going to allow myself to cry during those scenes because Tevye wouldn't. But during rehearsal, all I do is cry.
Yeah, right.
I can barely get through the scene. And that's a testament to the great writing and the beautiful story.
In no way is this dated.
Oh, in no way is the show dated. Sadly.
Sadly.
In no way is the show dated. We have the issue with Syrians fleeing their homes, going to other countries, and other countries refusing
not
to accept
welcoming
them.
them.
It's
yes.
such an awful, awful situation. And still anti-Semitism everywhere. It's never, sadly, never a subject that goes out of style. People are always being oppressed somewhere. There is always bigotry. There is always hatred towards other people because of their race or religion. And that's why Fiddler is important, and people need to see it. People need to hear this story, so maybe we can change some lives. Maybe we can get the conversation going.
Her performance in A View from the Bridge earned Jessica a Tony nomination, and she co-starred with Denzel Washington in Julius Caesar. Fiddler is Jessica's first musical. What does it mean to you personally, not so much professionally, but personally, to bring Golda back to the Broadway stage?
I always have had just an organic connection to my own heritage, and my grandparents lived with us, and I'm a fairly spiritual person, and so it actually just struck me that these years of going to synagogue or reading about just religion in general, thinking about religion, I had sort of clocked enough time to have a very emotional reaction to being asked to do the piece. I think a lot about why people hold on to their religions. Just in general, it's a really very difficult thing to pass on to your kids, but the idea that, because when one is young, they don't understand that a spiritual belief would help you in a great time of crisis. And then you just live long enough and you realize how many people are truly helped by that. And whatever belief system you have, it does help hundreds of millions of people. And it started to, and it started to really resonate in me. And then, of course, when you look at that play and you look at what they're holding on to, in these times of crisis, you understand their conflict, and you understand the historical conflict with holding on to Judaism or any religion, but you recognize the great gravity of their desire.
How would you describe Golda?
Oh, I would describe Golda as a woman really in the midst of a midlife crisis. So it's really perfect for me. But it is that she is having a midlife crisis, both because what's going on with her family and the ages of her daughters, and her feeling of trepidation that two of them should and are about to leave the house.
Losing control.
Losing control. And then also this reflection that you get after you've been with someone for, I've probably been married to Tevye, I'd say for 23 years, I'm guessing, and you just think, oh, this is it. And let's just embrace it.
How would you describe their relationship? What is the basis of it?
They are utterly codependent, and they remind me a lot of my grandparents, and I think a lot of people of that generation who had what I would define as a hostile relationship, but they were deeply, deeply mired in each other's emotional and physical and everyday life. And so, God forbid something happened to one of them, the other would not be able to survive. But I think the hostility comes out of just the anxiety of having things work out, and that is some kind of dynamic that they've created over time, or just whatever the rhythm of their environment is, because I just think things were more impulsive at that time.
And that's probably segues into maybe your answer to this question, which is, what's its timeless appeal?
It just fills us deeply on that level of the human desire to fall in love, and then the desire to have an emotional relationship to your family and your home. It hits us on every level. We all are filled, and then it's like this package, and then who doesn't like to cry alone in the dark as everybody shuffles off to the unknown?
Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Find me a find, catch me a catch. Matchmaker, matchmaker, look through your book and make me a perfect match. Matchmaker, matchmaker, I'll bring the veil, you bring the groom, slender and pale. Bring me a ring, for I'm longing to be the envy of all I see.
Bartlett Shear's list of highly acclaimed productions includes the revivals of Joe Turner's Come and Gone, South Pacific, and The King and I. He received a Tony nomination for all three. During our interview at Sheldon's apartment, Bart explained why he has a personal connection to Fiddler.
I happen to be somebody whose father was born in a shtetl in Lithuania. So I was drawn to Fiddler because I have all these pictures that I've shown Sheldon of my weird relatives that have this cursive Hebrew on the back. And I kind of somehow am using the experience of Fiddler to recreate something I don't know anything about. I think our job in the theater is to tell stories and gather around the campfire and tell stories of our ancient ancestors, and then relive our own problems each time we hear them. And that's quite the same quality of Fiddler. I want to feel like history actually has some impact in my life.
Jerome Robbins posed the question to Sheldon and Jerry and everybody else on the creative team, what is Fiddler on the Roof about?
I think it's about tradition, but I think it's about time. One of the things about tradition is that living in the 21st century in such a chaotic universe with so many influences, it's hard to establish a narrative to our lives which makes sense of it. So one thing theater can do is provide an opportunity to experience history in a real way. What's beautiful about Fiddler is, whether you're Jewish or not, it creates the sense of tradition and context for a community and for a people, and that everybody is seeking the same line of thinking.
Why is Danny absolutely right for the part of Tevye?
Danny has the perfect mixture of skills to play Tevye because he has a great deal of depth as an actor. He has a capacity for genuine humor. He can be extremely angry. On stage, he's not by his nature angry, and he can sing. So he brings to it, and he's just maturing in just enough of a way that he is right for the part now. People want to follow him into the experience.
Do you feel a particular obligation with Fiddler because you've been handed a treasured piece of American musical theater.
Any of those revivals have an interesting balancing act between kind of boring to the root of the original and finding something new and immediately significant for now. And so the material will help me see whatever new light I can in this age for what makes a special fiddler for now.
Thank you for being with us and helping us celebrate Fiddler's return to Broadway.
All day long I'd biddy biddy bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work. Lord, who made the lion and the lamb, you decreed I should be what I am. Would spoil some